Welcome back to Raised by Giants Illuminated Insights discussion. We are live. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you guys and any moderators out there and any members out there. We have an amazing show for you guys here today with returning co-host, the creator of Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube, discussing energetic changes on Earth as the sun repeats its 400-year cycle of low activity, affecting global crop production and the economy and everyone on our planet, with a timeline for what to expect from now to 2030 as society resets. David DuByne, welcome back to the show. How's it going, my friend?
A pleasure to be here. And it does seem there's upticks left, right, and center occurring across the planet, geopolitically, economically, and celestially, along with those energies that would accompany said changes in celestial mechanics and planetary orbits. Glad we can have a conversation today.
Well, I'm glad that you survived the zombie apocalypse, right? Did you fend them off with your super high fence you have around your property, Dave?
No, I fended them off with some spaghetti that I cooked up earlier. I threw wet noodles at them.
Well, you better dig a moat next time. Big moat around
that'd be the crocodile invasion.
Lizard people invasion from underground. But I think
don't bring up the lizard people. We're going to have to go talk about Samaria or something.
Well, I think this is a good place to start today with the amount of fear-mongering that comes from this community. And when you step back, Dave, none of it ever happens. How many doomsdays have we lived through? At least 10 just in my lifetime, whether that be coming from the community or the mainstream ones being Y2K in 2012. And those, I think that those were experiments to see how people would react. Now, mainstream people aren't going to fall for that as much anymore, but you know who will fall for it? The conspiracy and the truther community will fall for it every time. And I have no idea why. You think by how many predictions that's failed, people would wise up to it. How many more is it going to take until people start seeing it for what it is? It's a scam designed for fear and paranoia and ultimately confusion.
Yeah, but I would say one thing about the 2012, that the way you could read the Mayan codices, it was more of a change of human psyche and awareness and change of an age. And then just a mere 10 years later, we sit here with the awakening upon us, where you can clearly see it, where that genie needs to be put back in the bottle. And you can see why the World Economic Forum, the Mother Weffers, and a few others are trying their best to try to contain that awareness and that, sprouting of humanity's awareness of it. Otherwise, the whole doomsday thing at that time, that was just one interpretation of it. But when it was talking literally about moving into a new world, it's talking about what we're experiencing right now. The change of an age, the change of awareness of human psyche and human consciousness on how they perceive reality around them with these energetic changes that would actually affect the lobes of the brain, the magnetic interface, the electrical magnetic interface of our brains, the way it just inputs the stimulus around us. They pretty much mapped it out into, all right, we're coming into another phase state change. So from that point forward, look for a lot of things to start changing in the way humanity perceives the world around it. And you can clearly see right now that everybody's perceiving something different. The old world shattered into 1,000 pieces, Humpty Dumpty, not coming back, super glue or not, bye-bye. But you can see how that world sort of changed in that. And I would agree, everything else from the Y2K to even the financial collapse of 2008 and 9, everybody thought, and that was definitely the end of the economic era. But somehow with quantitative easing and never-ending money printing, we strung it along all the way until the next banking collapse at the end of 2019. And then subsequently, saw all the events in the last 3 years that allowed never-ending money printing once again to string it along for another 3 years. Now, I don't know how many more times. I think they've really run the course now, but I said that last time too. A lot of people have said, well, we said that last time too, but somehow these systems that should have failed just keep trudging along.
They do. It's unbelievable. Now, I'm not saying don't have all your ducks in a row. Of course, have your ducks in a row. But if someone tells you that the sky is red, be sure to walk out your front door and check to see if the sky is red, right? That's what I'm saying, And what I've discovered, Dave, is that the truther community and the conspiracy community is just as infiltrated as the mainstream media, right? They're just as bad as the ones that they claim are brainwashed and they claim have no idea what's going on. And the events with the zombie thing has just proved that, right? All this stuff is distractions, and there's always something going on, right, to keep you on the hook. Nuclear war is always on the precipice. Russia is always planning a cyber attack. It's always the same thing over and over again. And how long have we been talking about nuclear war? Ever since the U.S. dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? When was that? I think that was at the end of World War II, right? In 1945. We've been talking about nuclear war.
Yeah, 2 points to that. First, if you've been counting, there's been more than 2,000 nuclear explosions of tests, far larger, far greater in magnitude than anything Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Since the 1940s, more than 2,000 tests, some above ground, some below ground, some beneath the ocean surface. So in today's world, they could still scare you with that, but a limited nuclear strike in precision positions, limited, you could probably do 10, drop off 10 nukes in major cities, and it would really have very little effect on our planet. Now, the scare factor that they've built into the wakings of just everybody about nuclear this or nuclear that, the meltdowns from the power plants, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But if you look at it just from the numbers, 2,000 different experiments of varying magnitude, including the Tsar Bomba, which, talk about Russia. Dude, they were afraid that was going to crack the planet in half. That was millions of times larger than the one in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Millions of times larger. But we're still here. Like, how many times did they do that ramping up of things that were 10,000 times larger than Hiroshima? 100,000 times larger than Hiroshima. And that order of magnitude through the 50s and 60s, all those massive, unbelievable tests above ground, everything. And we're still here. Now, I'll dovetail that into, I go to estate sales sometimes because I'm always looking for tools. And if anybody out there, that's a great place to find tools and things you might need, like old glassware and like just things from an era past that grandmas and grandpas have in their house. And once they passed away, they're selling all their stuff. So anyway, I went to this one, and it was a well-known prepper around this area. He was in the Army, and it was a radio communication guy, and he had all this kind of crazy radio gear and everything. But anyway, he passed away, and his house was up for sale, and they're having an estate sale there. So we went there. It was a well-known thing around anybody who's getting ready. This dude's got a million things in his house. You might want to go check it out. So we bought an old Geiger counter, and I wish I have it with me, but it's over at my friend Ryan's house over there. Anyway, when I bought it, I got it out of the box. It was pegged. Everything was pegged, completely pegged. We thought, and we tried to readjust the knobs down. Nothing would adjust. As soon as it would adjust, it would peg back up again. And then we started to look at when it was calibrated. It was calibrated in 1963. So the calibration at 0 point of 1963, like if you were from 1963 and used that same Geiger counter and we plopped you into today's world and it pegged like that, you'd probably have a heart attack out of fright of how high the radiation readings were. So the thing is, now we read more about it. You have to send it into the manufacturer, then they'll recalibrate it again to today's saturation of radiation across the planet in the atmosphere. So think about it. Put those two pieces of information together for a second, and then this nuclear war, I know it would be a terrible thing. There'd be a lot of death and a lot of destruction, and nobody wants that. But the fear associated with it, I think, is as many orders of magnitude above the true reality of it, of the contamination of it. Because you look at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and people are living there. They moved in right away in the 1950s again after the bombs were dropped. I traveled through Japan, went to Osaka, went up that way, didn't go through Nagasaki or Hiroshima, but it was as if nothing had ever happened there. And that was just decades later. So this fear that they can build into the mind, you got to think about the ultimate weapon for fear to control a society. I mean, let's make a list here. Okay. Nuclear Armageddon, nuclear weapons. Now, Armageddon means hundreds, if not thousands of those nuclear missiles come flying across at the exact same time. That is truly a civilization ending scenario. But 10 getting blown off across different cities around the world to then push the politics or the economy or whatever to create a new system, a new world governance system. that is going to be very limited effect across the planet. Physically, psychologically, that's going to be quite a different thing. So I'm then number 2, alien invasion. And what do you think, Ryder? What do you think number 3 or 4 and 5 would be? So we're talking about the biggest psychological manipulation weapons that are used today to still keep the populace in check. Nuclear war, alien invasion.
Those are the 2 biggest ones that I've seen, and I've commented several times that I believe that the whole alien and extraterrestrial hypothesis is a giant, huge psychological operation. That's what I think that it is, and they're just ramping it up hardcore right now. I mean, we just had the U.S. congressional hearing. I don't know if you heard the U.S. congressional hearing with Dave Grush talking about extraterrestrial bodies or non-biologic bodies that sometimes come along with crash retrieval craft. And he's just up there talking about stories. Everything, he admits it in that opening statements of that congressional hearing that his testimony is based on what other people have told him. So it's just stories. He has no proof. He has no evidence. And then you have the Mexican government rolling out fake alien bodies as a huge distraction. You know, that was proven fake back in 2018, made out of animal bones and human bones. And even that one mummy from Peru, Maria, that's in the Smithsonian, was concocted with a real elongated skull from Peru, and then mixed in with a altered and modified human animal carcass dug up from ancient Peruvian people. The Peruvian government has discounted that whole thing. They completely are like, Jaime Maussan is just, we don't have anything to do with him. He's a fraudster and a hoaxer, you know? So this whole extraterrestrial thing is, see, people think that it's a cover up for advanced technology, and I think that it is, military technology and free energy. But I actually have a video that I want to show you really quick, Dave, because this is a real free energy device. And I know that you've talked about this several times with magnetics and how magnets are used to create energy. This is a really, really big one here. And I'll put my fair use banner up. It doesn't have music, but here it is. This is a giant free energy device built on magnets. Have you ever seen one this big, Dave?
Never seen one that big. And I have to go on the record and publicly state that I'm not manufacturing, nor will I manufacture electrogravitic devices for the public arena to buy or sell on a commercial basis. I will not do that, and I am not doing that.
But this is incredible. This is what free energy is. This is what it is right here. And
well, it's just 2 magnets that are oscillating back and forth, and it's just the magnetic field getting the torque between those 2 and causing that rod to move in the middle there between. That's it. It's like when you were a kid with magnets on your desk that just moved back and forth. You know how you pushed them and the other one moved? They're doing the same thing, but very well done. I really like that design there.
Yeah, and
keep your finger out of the way, though.
Yeah, that's the patent for it there. But that's what free energy is. It's not a device. I mean, well, it is a device, but this one is using, magnets. So it's like, we already have a lot of this technology that they're claiming that aliens have or extraterrestrials have, so I don't know. It's a giant, huge psychological operation, in my opinion. I would like to get your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, well, all those devices that you described are all driven on magnetics and the Earth's magnetic field. So you have to, I'll put it in perspective for a second here. Since the early 1900s, just before the formation of the Federal Reserve, there was a choice to go with Nikola Tesla's energy systems across the planet or pull it back in with Westinghouse and charge by the meter and meter every single aspect of it, which included the introduction of massive mining to get the minerals, to create the copper cables, to put them across, and the steel to put the stanchions up there and thing. Now you have to realize everything that you're seeing with the green movement is all based on, we got to limit fossil fuel use. We have to limit all this, that, and the other that's coming from the ground, the mining, the extraction of fuels, the usage of fuels, the exhaust from the fuels. And I get it, but we never, ever had to do that. So you have to be a world body of government and now come out and actually come clean with the world that, by the way, we manipulated you for the last 140 years, 130 years to make you buy our products, use our products on the meter to control your life more. So you would actually have to work for us to consume our product that we forced down your throat. And by the way, you have to pay tax on it every time you consume it. Now try to sell that to the public and say, well, you know what? Today we actually feel like giving you electromagnetic energies, or electrogravitics is the proper term for those of you that are searching, like electrogravity. It's called electrogravitics. And there's tons of patents. That was a great one that you had there, Ryder. But think about how could they sell the world on we have to change systems now to a brand new system of electrogravitics and magnetic generation and Earth's magnetic field powered devices that you don't have to burn a thing. Like, you couldn't do that switch cleanly. There would be no way. There would be so much overthrow, man. Everything would be like Sri Lanka in a matter of minutes. People would be so angry, storming the castle and the palace. The only way to possibly bring it into this new era would be capturing downed alien spacecraft, which were, in my opinion, this is all my opinion here, the same technologies from Nikola Tesla and Dr. Brown, Marconi, that have been engineered, experimented on, and perfected through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And almost every single UFO you've seen reported, crash or whatever is our own electrogravitics technology that the military had been using and working with for the last 80 years. Now, I might throw on top of that, okay, the craft is one thing, but trace that back to our modern world. If things could magnetically levitate and run down, it wouldn't even have to be rails, but it probably would be, because that'd just be an extra safety measure. Things would be weightless. You wouldn't really have to use fuel. So think about just the transportation sector alone, from air flights, airplanes, to ships, to trains, to automobiles, to cars, to trucks. The fuel usage for that, if you have to put it in a meter or a barometer to try to gauge what it would probably be 98% reduced. So you think about the transportation oil industry usage for that, the motor parts, the motors, the factories making the motors, the jobs created for that, the raw materials for all the motors, the steel, the component parts. Think about all the fluids that are in any given engine, from the oils again, in the same, it's a whole same streamlined industries that's supplying all this. None of it would have been needed. And the copper wiring across our planet, Wayne Steiger had made a real good point in one of his videos saying, in the beginning it was copper wires, so an electrical being could inhabit those wires. It's an electromagnetic frequency, no different than electricity itself traveling through the wire. With the magnetic field, it creates the pathway for the electricity. You're not really jamming electricity down the wire. You're creating a magnetic field to allow the electricity to move through the wire. That's why there's that insulation on it. But he was saying that an electromagnetic being could exist within that, because it's a frequency, and copper can transmit frequencies quite well. So we never would have needed to wire our world at all with any copper wiring at all, which brings me back into, in the 1880s is when they were really getting deep into the seances and really getting deep into the Goetia and the Keys of Solomon, and the highest echelons of power and money were super deep into the occult. So, I'm taking it two different ways here with the same story. Is the present world we see was built on a lie that we have to mine, dig, burn, and explode stuff to make things move. But you could use that as the backup excuse. But why did we need to wire the world for electrical generation? Was it to create a housing for this being to live in that they contacted during that 1880s period? And it's been talked about and referenced earlier, but really it got into it in the 1880s, which I know you can ramble on about for days, weeks, and months, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But the cover excuse being, oh, they just shelved all that Tesla technology, so we had to go wire the planet. That's a great cover story. But in reality, the real story would have been, we need to build a wired infrastructure for this being from the other side to inhabit in our third dimensional physical space, but it can reside in copper wiring. Gee, we need an excuse to wire the entire planet to give this thing a home in the third dimension. That's a bit weirder than, hey, we shelved some Tesla technologies and made you buy some oil.
I like that thought, and I like that aspect of it, that it was to bring in a different kind of energy or a consciousness or an entity in through the electrical wiring. I mean, people have talked about that. The entities can come through your Wi-Fi router, and it's in your electronics, and come through your TV and your phone and all that. A Black Mirror device as your phone. And I think that it might be that we just didn't know. We didn't really know that like not enough people knew that we could power the world with some sort of free energy device, with some sort of anti-gravitic siphoning off of the Earth's magnetic field. So then we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And then we just make wiring, we make power lines, we make all of that. And then we're like, oh, well, it's too late to turn back now. We just got to keep nailing this into the coffin because we've come this far on it. It's kind of like history as well. I don't really think that a lot of history was done that way on purpose. I think that it just got to the point that there was no turning back on it. They were like, okay, well, this has already been instilled into the consciousness of everybody. Like, we've now discovered that a lot of it is wrong, but we can't go back and change it because we've already installed this thought and this idea among the public. And if we go back on it and change what happened, then that's going to present a lot of distrust within the establishment. But there's already a lot of distrust within the establishment for not doing that, right?
I don't know. We moved from 8-track tapes to CDs pretty quickly. So, I mean, jumping a technology or to a different system, I don't know why they wouldn't have done it back then.
I mean, that's a good
That was a
point.
joke.
I mean, that's a good point, though. I mean, like, why would they just, withhold why would they just not come out with it whenever it was time? Because there was a lot of talk back in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s of anti-gravity craft. Like, that pretty soon we're going to be using the things are going to be free energy, and there's going to be all this new revelations in the public. And then it seemed like all that stuff just went away. Now, I think that might have been done on purpose, but the original thought and the original idea, I think that it was just they just didn't know. So then they just wired the entire planet and used all these power lines. And then whenever it came out that you could actually, power the entire planet with harnessing the Earth's magnetic field, it was too late to turn back by then.
Yeah, but the chimeras would be a thing too. So let's say that did, okay, it was too long. But now we've gone down the solar panel era and this windmill era. You think that at the beginning of both of those eras of transitioning and really ripping to shreds the economy of our planet to transition to a new power source, that what you and I are talking about at least would be in the conversation, but it's still not. Now, at that point, then I'm calling BS on it, because at that point, then it's being hidden. Because you can't tell me that you're trying to bring out millions of acres of solar panels, but you're not talking about electrogravitics at the same time. Like, it can't be possible unless it's a plan.
I agree with that to a degree. I think it's a little bit of both in there. But, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that, if it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. Now, I could be wrong. And I think people really want a doomsday event, not to get back on the doomsday stuff, but I think that they really want to believe that. I think they want it so bad, Dave, that they're willing to make it happen or reinforce it. And that's what we see through this community all the time. And I think that people just need someone to blame, right? They want to be mad about something all the time. And when you provide solutions for them, they don't want to hear it. Right?
Yeah, because I've had that same conversation with my parents and my parents' friends and, people of a generation older than me. Because when I was growing up, I was like, why aren't you making a change? Why aren't you the guys one leading the spearhead of the change? Why is it our generation, the one behind us, that needs to make the change? And they were very clean. We just want the stability. We've worked our whole lives for this. Why would we give this up? Why would we put ourselves in jeopardy to give up everything we've worked for our entire life? And their minds also is not going to change a single thing. So why even bother? I think stability is just the base. You can go back millions of years of humans, not the Homo sapiens sapien, but you're going back through millions of years of us being here. Now, if you go back with the Indian texts, they say humans have been around for 20 plus million years. And if you look at archaeological records, Lucy and all that stuff, that we evolved somehow through, it either had to be cosmic ray bombardment that allowed gene changes, or just completely edited, like the Sitchin stories and Sumerian myths and legends talk about the Homo sapiens sapien creation from a seed species. All right, whatever. There's like a whole bunch of array and levels within that. So we got 20 million years plus to 400,000 years. Okay, well, whatever it is, humanity has gotten stuck here somehow. But the baseline through it all, I don't care how long we go back, 400,000 years, 200,000 years, 2 million, stability was the number one thing. Because you have to realize, how blessed and how lucky you are right now. You were born, you won the lottery of all lotteries to be born at this time. And I'm not talking about for the spiritual growth and the soul growth and that sort of thing. Although it could be a part of that, included in, of course. But the stability that you have right now on our planet is an anomaly above all anomalies. The stable weather that we have is such an anomaly that you could put it into like a 6 to 10 sigma event above what the normal weather, cataclysms, cometary bombardment, massive earthquake, etc., that shattered civilization after civilization after civilization over the last how many umpteen hundreds of thousands or millions of years. Like, we crave stability. Do you know how many times our forefathers and ancestors had to go out and hunt and came back empty and starved to death? Like, to have available food. And that's how these, companies manipulate you, because your base reflex for that salt and that fat. I mean, that's what humans really are craving, strip everything else away. And you go down to this just like base operating level of a person being alive. They need food, water, air, but inside that food, there's going to be a craving for salts and fats. And the stability of life, we are so lucky that our planet is so stable right now. We actually know when we can plant and when we can harvest our food on a basis that's enough to feed the entire planet year after year after year. I mean, they would just be on their knees begging and crying, sobbing tears of joy if they were to receive such blessings in the past. We take advantage of what's around us right now, not knowing really what we have. And see, that's being taken advantage of, also the stability portion of it. Like, they're using that part of hardwiring of humans against us, because 80% of the population is just happy with the stability. They just want to raise their family. They just want to be left alone. Leave the kids. I want to take the kids to soccer. I want to do this. I want to do just whatever. I'll believe anything and say anything. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Just don't, as long as just leave us alone and keep the house. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'll do whatever the company says. Following the line for stability. But then there's the other 20% of people out here that are like, okay, well, stability is one thing, truth's another. The changes are real. But you can see how all this is being programmed and used against us, because most people want the stability. That is just humanity in a nutshell. So again, then bring it forward, and then we got the 20% that's not content with that, that's looking for other answers or different definitions of life or why things are happening, that then provide different, avenues of information to flow out. And then that becomes what it becomes, as we've seen over the last several years or decades. Since 9/11.
Now, speaking of the weather, do you think that these 4 gas giants that are forming around the Earth is going to create some weather anomalies? I have the screenshot that you sent me the other day. Is that
Yeah, I'd love to see it, to put that up, but I'd like your response also. Okay, so interestingly, that's today. If you're watching this right now, this is October 7th alignment here. Now, what I did is I changed it to the geocentric model here. Now, most times when you're looking at our solar system, you're looking at a heliocentric model where the sun's in the middle and all the planets are scooting around the sun. Well, this one, I reversed it and put the Earth at the center so you could see where the sun was and where all the planets were in relation to our Earth. Now, this is a very, very light version of what will occur in October of 2024. Now, you can see there's something very special in the heavens. If you were just to use gravity, forget the electromagnetism, forget toroid fields, just use gravity. What happens here? You got all those 4 gas giants in a certain quadrant right out there tugging, and the Earth right there with the sun getting tugged. You know, you would expect far more earthquakes. So the window is open. This is my prediction here. The window is open now from the 7th through, say, the 16th to 17th of October for far larger quakes, like big ones that'll make the news, or big volcanic eruptions. But at the same time, if you were going to try to tweak and use energies and amplify events using HARP or whatever, things through your router or whatever, electromagnetically to amplify Earth changes or amplify human psychological changes, this is the time to do it.
Yeah, this was really interesting and quite a coincidence when I reached out to you a couple of weeks ago and asked you to come on the 7th, and this is happening today. Now, well,
did you have the other one with the Tree of Life alignment?
Let me see. I got all of the ones that you sent me before. Was it this one?
No, that is just a... If you're looking astrologically, and those of you who might take a look at where everything is lined up in that single quadrant, this is just an electromagnetic look, or it's an astrological look where astrology reflects the energies moving through that affect humans on different levels, compared to the astronomy where we sit is where we sit in the heavens. And you can explain where we sit in the actual physical location, that's astronomy. And then astrology would explain the energetic flows through that. And see, those of you out there, 250 years ago, approximately, astronomy and astrology were the same science. They were intertwined, and they had those two dualities within the same, because one could explain the other. But today, they've rifted the whole energetic part away and said, oh, that's woo-woo science. Okay, we know the planets, they're in their orbits. Kind of hard to fake that because they go this fast. And then you pretty much project out where they're going to be even weeks, months, years from now, because they're moving around at the same speed. And
got this one here.
Yeah, that's the block wall coming in 2024. You know, you might go to those black ones there. You see the one with that V on it? Yeah, right there. Click on that one. I'm going to send you now, when you respond to my comment here, I'm going to send you through Skype the Tree of Life alignment next to the Kabbalah with that alignment right there, and you'll see it as quickly as I see it.
Is this
Those
one,
4 gas giants are going to line up in the outer solar system, and it's going to create some sort of funneling of electromagnetism through that point where generally, if the planets are spread out across the orbits and you get some over here, some over there, some behind, some in front, some on the quarters out there, that more of electromagnetism is sort of more, I wouldn't say thinly split, but the potentiality, it's pulling in different directions because of the bodies out there. But when we get this lineup, it's sort of like 2 parallel, creating a chute. You know, you ever watch bobsledding? Yeah, right. That's the previous slide. Earth swings around in front of the sun where the V connects. That's where the Earth will be in April of 2025. But you'll have to notice in context, gravitationally, where all the gas giants are behind us and the sun behind us. So everything's going to get pulled into the Earth April of 2025 beginning. So whatever's out there, and I'm not saying there is, or maybe there's not a planet-ending asteroid out there. I'm just saying whatever space debris it is, and there is some at all times, so don't delude yourself that there's none. We're going to get rocked by a bunch of space rocks that normally would not be anywhere in our vicinity. They're just getting, everything in the whole entire solar system is pulling it through us, through the face of the Earth, then to the sun, and then to Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, all in that exact line. So whatever's getting directly pulled in, that'd be like having a line of magnets. Now, what do you think the potentiality if you're going to increase magnetism when you stack 7 or 8 much larger magnets and just see what pulls into something the size of a pea in front of it? You know, you're going to get some huge above the normal inflows because I could imagine our magnetosphere would also be affected. So it would be weaker, smaller, thinner, because we would be coming into solar minimum at that point anyway, just on the irregular 11-year cycle. Forget the 400-year cycle, forget the 2,000-year cycle. As we are approaching into that time era of 2025, another year and a half or so from now, we will definitely be way down the scales, heading toward the regular solar minimum. And every time that happens, galactic cosmic rays increase, our magnetospheres weaken, and we get more shooting stars. That's a given on any 11-year minimum. But this one's exceptional with that lineup, with the sun behind us and all the gas giants behind us. Weaken magnetosphere, and the amount of space debris that could penetrate further deeper into the atmosphere and get to the ground is going to be exponentially higher than any time in the last, 400 years.
Now, I've heard you say before, Dave, that you think that this event is going to make some sort of cosmic change, or not cosmic change, but a consciousness change, that it might affect our consciousness or affect our mind as we go through this. And we may see things that we may have never seen before in the sky. What do you think is there anything else? I just mentioned the weather, and you just mentioned shooting stars and earthquakes and volcanoes. Is there anything else that it could possibly affect, in your opinion, of course, and pure speculation, because we don't really know what's going to happen?
We don't
right?
know. So people who say you're wrong, how could you be wrong before the event? I love how people are so judgmental. I get messages all the time. You're wrong. It's never going to happen. Okay. I'll be judged wrong after it doesn't happen. And this is in no way, when we started talking about the show, one of these cataclysms that's going to reset society. It's just a part of the movement through. And I could say one other thing. Yeah, the human resonance, the field around the brain is going to be affected electromagnetically. And Ryder, I sent you that picture right there. Can you please go to Skype and grab that one and pull it in? Because it's the tree of life set next to that solar alignment, or that alignment that we'll see in 2024. I'm terming it the tree of life alignment. Now, you're looking for signs in the heavens, signs in the skies. And just as the wise men were looking, and that, star held for months in its position bright enough where they could follow it. It was a very long duration event, and a very long duration sign is a better way to say it. So if you're looking for signs in the heavens, this event here leading up to October 23rd of 2024, it's visible enough now, but as we get through it's going to be very visible 6 months prior and 6 months after. So if you're looking for a long duration event in the skies, that's it. And the human resonance field, the way that humanity's brains are going to be affected by this, and the elite using technologies on the planetary level to amplify outcomes of what would have been natural outcomes anyway, but they're going to take it to the uber. So imagine if you could, I could ping my glass, and that's as much as it vibrates if I click it and hit it with my finger. But now if I have an oscillator here, I can tune that in fast enough between that 1 or 2 seconds, and then crank the sound and slowly change the waves and get that glass to shatter. The first part was natural. The second part was man-made. You get a greater outcome by riding on top of the natural cycle. And I think we're going to see a lot of this happening. And I think a lot of distraction we're seeing right now is truly because these elite that use the sun as their timeline understand that whatever happens during this magnetic field, if there's no earth changes, great, but there will be some change in the way humanity perceives reality. And it very well might be that they just look through and they actually see the lizard people, or they look through and they actually see like dark auras around people, and they can clearly see the dark from the light, like in real time right in front of them. Some kind of just shaking of the veil that breaks through literally to a new world where it can no longer be hidden. Can you imagine the evil would actually put a black aura around you at different varying, densities based on how evil you really were? And if everybody could see that, like, those are the types of changes that could be anticipated during a huge electromagnetic change that would affect the way your brain operates based on the magnetic field of our planet.
Well, the question then becomes, could the population handle that kind of change? I mean, we already have a lot of mental illness going around, not only in this community, but just out in the world in general. And without one of these
Well, no,
events
that mental
happening,
illness is building, and you've noticed it getting stranger and bigger and larger and more weird by the minute. That's the same thing as we're building into this electromagnetic freak show, for a better term, coming up in October. You're starting to see it. It's not going to be like an instant event. There's a build up to it. You start to see different changes. The toroid fields are looping in a slightly different fashion. Now, if this is already affecting humanity and we're still a year and a half or a year and a month out from this thing, like you're seeing it in real time, the changes occurring because of electromagnetic field changes. You're seeing it occur. People are just blaming it on homelessness. They're blaming it on this. They're blaming it on, whatever it is. But it's already in play. That's the whole thing. Now you need to distract from it. Give excuses why it's happening so rapidly. Give excuses why everybody's noticing it. Before only once, a few people might notice that out of the whole working society. A few people would notice that there was something really out of kilter over there. But generally, everybody just went along. It was kind of like day-to-day workings. Things seemed to be in check. Social contract was working. Government agreed to do this. They did it. But right now, you can see in real time, there's not one person on this planet that can't see something completely disrupted out of normal in the way that society functions, and more so, the people inside the society functioning and behaving differently. That's from electromagnetic field changes.
and social conditioning and social
And social
engineering.
conditioning.
Like it's really weird.
Yeah,
when you-
I forgot that important part too. Thanks for bringing it to my attention.
it's really weird when you go out now, Dave. Like you just go out and you walk around in public and no one's smiling anymore.
I
Right?
know.
No
The
one
joy of
looks
life
up
is
at you.
gone
No
for
one
many.
looks up at you. No one smiles at you. No one even really says hello and how are you doing? It's really strange. And I think that it's created this kind of this hermit mentality. Like, let's just stay home. Let's not go out, right? We can just get everything delivered to our house, right? We can just get our food delivered to our house. We can just get our groceries delivered to our house. We don't need to
Until
go
you
to
can't.
we don't need to
And
go to the movie theater anymore. We got HBO Max and we can just watch all of the movies in our house in the comfort of our own home. And I think that that's what people are missing. They're missing that camaraderie between people and that energy exchange of people in your toroidal field as a human being interacting with other people's toroidal fields and connecting. We've shut ourselves off. We've shut ourselves down, and it's really unbelievable. I was just noticing this yesterday. I was walking around downtown. I'm like, no one's smiling. They look like they hate their lives. They look like they don't want to be here. They're just. It's like a robot cybernetic world already, without people even being augmented with artificial intelligence or some sort of cybernetic augmentation. We're already robots. It's already here. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, like a whole bevy of thoughts came when you said that social conditioning. Perhaps, if we've gone through this cycle many a time before, that you would understand that perhaps one of the changes in the resonance field of the human brain and the way it processes information would to make you more susceptible to that same social conditioning. Because I'm wondering, just as a mind experiment, if they would have done the same social conditioning and tried to implement these same exact things in, say, 2015, could they have gotten away with it? I mean, why has it been waited until these perfect dates and, the Pluto return and the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction and these types of things, the changing of the great mutation in the signs, like that all occurred 2020. Those are major civilization energy flips and changes and flow, absolute phase state change at that point. Astrologically, looking at that, those are gigantic events. They happen once every 400, 800, 2,000 years in themselves as an energetic change to mark a new age. Now, the Mayans were pretty close to it, 2012. But then you come into all these, things that I mentioned in 2020. There was 3 different that occurred at the same time. So perhaps the elite knew they could only get away with this sort of social conditioning and morphing of the planet after the magnetic field started to change and get into this, what I call that tree of life alignment. Now, can you go back to that one more time, please? That the
Yes.
slide. I want everybody to take a very close look at this thing here. And, you know, that during the COVID time too, we had to stand 6 feet apart. Well, your magnetic field, which you're talking about, that toroid field off your body, is about 3 feet. So if you're 6 feet apart, you're not going to really interloop with anybody else's magnetic field. There's a human interconnection, and we're psychic whether you know it or not. So to keep people apart during these magnetic field changes is also a strange thing to do, but how did they do it? So just everybody can feel like there's a buzz in it, there's something going on. So, you know, the Kabbalah, like the tree of life is on the left side. And what we see with the planets and Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are that top part of, with Eris, the top part of that tree of life. And even if you look where Venus would be, and where the sun is, and where the earth is, how many of those are in the same position that they would be? Now, for me, that's the mark of the beginning of the cycle. Now, where's the ending? So as above, so below. So you'd probably invert that and look for another something like Eris, but a little further out on one of the subplanets, and then start your march inward. It might be like Uranus, Neptune, and then it would flip, and the planets would have to be in different. So as above, so below. So, and it would be on the left side of the chart right there. Also, where the reason and intellect are affected, and that down to go F, that area would have to be inverted and flipped, because that's the ending of the cycle, the beginning of that new one. So you look, if you look at this tree of life alignment here, and you start to plug in the planets where they are, there's only 2 that aren't in the right place. So if you're going to go as above, so below, if this marks the beginning of the cycle, then you're going to have the termination of the cycle that completes with the same planetary alignments that would fill in those other 3, that are not covered at the moment, but would also go up the center spine, something like this.
That would be the phallic symbol of the tree of life.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to look for that in the planets again. Now, I found something similar to it coming up in 2032. And also in 2034, something similar, but, you know, again, I just have found the beginning of the cycle, in my opinion. And, you know, if you just look at a random chance, if you look at statistics, I mean, this tree of life has been encoded into our civilization for thousands of years, at the bedrock of a center of religions around the planet. And then suddenly we get this alignment in the sky that's nearly the same. At the same time, we're in this complete morph and destruction and reemergence and phoenix out of the ashes from our previous civilization, which we used to live in, that you can see is no longer here. It's not coming back. That civilization we're in the middle of something brand new, evolving into a new civilization right this second. Now, you cannot tell me with a straight face that planets that only line up like that generally once every 400 years, but the configuration with the perfection of the square, that was seen in 79 AD last time. The only difference being that Neptune was leading Uranus. Those same 2 planets were in the exact same spot, but just one was flipped with the other. Now, if you really want to take it planet for planet, alignment for alignment, degree of arc for degree of arc through the heavens, that is as close as you can get to that 79 AD was the last time that this occurred. And being so center and so plugged into the Kabbalah there in the mystic schools, or the tree of life, for those of you that just know it as the tree of life, the chances of that, it's not random. Ryder, what do you think the chances are? Random or non-random? What percentage do you think that actual proper lineup could plug in there, and that would be just random happenstance? Looking for signs in the heavens as we come into this restructuring of our civilization.
Yeah, I think that we would have to wait to see the end of the cycle and see if it completes the tree of life, Kabbalah tree of life there, and because that would really solidify the entire thing right there. If the end of the cycle completes the tree, and then we can put the end of the cycle next to the beginning of the cycle, and it makes a complete tree of life, then that's
Correct.
probably not just coincidence.
Yeah, because some of those planets would overlay right into the same spots again, right?
Yeah, if we get a phallic symbol, I think that would be the root chakra at the bottom,
Mhm.
and the sacral chakra, which is Yasad, right there in the middle. If we get if we get the square, and then along with the phallic symbol, which is Yasad in the root chakra there, then I mean that's not just coincidence.
Yeah, that the closest one, like I said, I could find with that very that's not nearly as precise on the squareness that you're seeing in this is 2032. They square back up again in
2032.
2032, about 10 years after this one. 2033 somewhere. That's why I always say it's not exact, because they're kind of working in, and it's not so precise on the square to know exactly that's a square day. They're kind of a little bit off. But so when you're trying, is that the exact center? Is that the exact center? It's kind of difficult to know. But this one's pretty easy to see where the exact center of it is.
Yeah, it's really incredible, and I like Jay's. He's talking about the cross of Henday. I think that I sent you that.
Oh, I had
For
actually done a slide on the Hyundai Cross after we had our talk last time. Let me see if I can send you that also, if you don't mind. This is a live show. We're just going to send stuff each other, and then it'll just be the way it is.
Oh yeah, here's the one
The Hyundai
that I
Cross.
sent you. This is the cross of Henday here, and it depicts the four gas giants there, which is
Yep, and
really
those are the four
interesting.
gas giants. Now plug those in together. Here, let me send you a different graphic. This one should put it together there. See, it's just the tree of life again, but the planets are in a different way. I really zoomed them in, so you're missing a little bit out of the field there, but otherwise. Okay. You can see where it is. I know I had, because I did the Hyundai Cross and I put it next to the same. So the planets you're looking at there that I just sent you, they're much more zoomed in on the view there. So put your Hyundai Cross and cover over the tree of life, and put your Hyundai Cross on top of that tree of life slide there. So, and then you'll see exactly that they match up.
Probably be incredible.
Oh,
Yeah.
you don't have, you got the, are you able to put the Hyundai Cross on top of that, or at least show them so what it is to get an idea of?
I just have the one Hyundai cross that I just showed, that I sent to you. This one. Yeah, that's the cross of Henday there. But if you have one that has the Henday cross on top of the
I do, and that's the one
yeah.
I'm looking for right now, and I wish I could send it to you. Now follow me with a thought there already. Oh, here it is. Maybe this is it, if I can find. So let me send you my Hyundai Cross. So here we go. We got it right there. Boom. That was a diamond thing. Diamond always says boom.
Boom.
So, yeah. Boom. All right. So this is after having our conversation with Jay that day. I ended up doing a little more research on that cross, because he's like, we were trying to explain what those angry suns were, or the angry sun in the middle, and what those like four stars were around that. Just trying to figure it out. But I can't believe it's the same top part of the configuration of the tree of life, and that tree of life alignment coming up. It's October 24th of 2024. Ryder, I sent that over to you in Skype. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah. So now it's twice referenced, here. So something significant with this lineup that was meant to be significant, and those clues left for us in history, so we would be finally smart enough to figure it out again, because they probably figured you go through a collapse phase, technology would be gone for 1,500 years or 1,000 years, whatever. And then eventually it would come back out again where people could understand your astronomy, because you got to figure how far we are now in understanding just like where the planets are around in the heavens, you could eventually anticipate a collapse of that. Hardly anybody would know how to use a sextant, and hardly anybody would know how to read the stars for navigation. I mean, just a fraction of 1% of people. And it would take a minute to build back up for the scientists to get the same machines, because we could, plan 150 years. They're going to do copper cables again, maybe not. They're going to come up. Finally, they'll have telescopes again. Finally, they'll do this. And, we could anticipate that a breakdown in society, like a serious cataclysm kind, would take another 1,000 years to build back up the tech. But you would leave messages so when they got to that point again, they could decode it. And I think that's what we saw here. Tree of Life and this Hyundai Cross are both showing you the same exact thing. Now, why is that? Why are they pointing to it?
Yeah, I think Jay believes that it's a coming natural disaster. And I think that's why he brought it up with in that conversation on the 200th episode special that we did a couple of months back.
Yeah, sorry, I called in.
Corey here says free energy comes from Giza harnessing power from Sirius constellation and keep it to keep the Earth in balance. I don't know. Possibility. A lot of people have said that the pyramids of Giza is like a power plant. It's an energy source. Some people think that it's like a death ray, Death Star, Giza Death Star.
But think about that thing when it was covered with polished limestone that was white and so blinding that they could see it 100 and something miles away from just such the reflection off of it, of the white polished limestone. Nothing like they show you today. They show those ones way at the top. They're all like pitted and eroded. I'm talking about like, bro, the most perfect polish you've ever seen on something, and the whitest of white. It's almost like they poured a polymer or something. I don't know.
Luis says the solar system is entering a very highly energetic part of the Milky Way, and it's going to be a rough ride. Hang on, folks.
Well, hey, wait a second. That's totally true. We are heading into a much more energetically active part of the solar system, and a more debris-dense area of the solar system as well. So that plasma that encapsulates and surrounds our whole solar system, including the sun, as we're punching through with the bow shock, is some like 6,000 degrees Celsius warmer. That's measurable. And I'm talking just around that. Outside is 6,000 to 7,000. I remember them saying 6, but they were anticipating that it was going to get higher, 6,000 degrees Celsius warmer. And we're talking about outside the bow shock of just what you would consider interstellar space, where you're getting into like a hot, like a heat shimmer on the road there, something like that, punching through one of those. But rough ride. Does it have to be a rough ride? It's going to be all in your mind and your preparation. Now, rough ride may be for the unprepared or unwilling to use their mind to create something better. Because, Ryder, the way you said, going out in public and, people create their own worlds of, because if you would have seen that sea of no smiles, and then you bumped into a couple that was smiling and bouncing around, they're using their mind in a different way to cut through the social programming and creating their own reality. Like, you would be visibly noticing that.
Yeah, F. Kitty here says that the conditioning is real. I have household members that can see it and still follow the common path, knowing it isn't right, but it's easier and comfortable. That's exactly right. That's what's going on.
Welcome to everybody's world.
She also says they were addicts addicted to the social norm. Very true.
They were addicted to the comfort, and that would be lost. And see, back then it wasn't like now, where a wrong thought and you lose your career and your ability to transact and all these things, and your ability to make an income. Back then it was about loss of social face across the neighborhoods. Hey, I got kids. Everybody plays together. We all go to the same schools. You're that wacko parent, dude. Nobody wanted to be that one, right? Because that's how they did it back in the day. Was the neighborhood nut job.
Joshua wants to know, what does David think about the record size ozone layer over the Antarctic? Does it tie into what's going on?
Well, let me ask you, ozone layer, are you talking about the ozone hole and the depletion in the column? Or I could answer the question, but I need a little more information about what they mean by ozone layer. Is it the ozone hole, which is now the largest? And NASA should be coming out with an update on the ozone hole it's either at right now the maximum or it's a little bit over. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll start to see more news stories about the ozone hole to the widest and largest it's ever been. And they thought they'd solve the problem. So this is another fear factor thing. Now, please just hold on to this one for a second, because it is going to get, they're going to try to take you down the first big hill on the roller coaster ride with this one. The ozone hole is now the biggest ever. So what kind of control is going to be used for that?
Absolutely. And speaking of walking around downtown, I went to a Whole Foods yesterday, and I'm sure you're
Avoid
aware,
that place.
I'm sure you're aware of this, but this is what they had at all of their registers.
You know,
This is a legit
videos.
photo.
I saw that one girl who was like, oh, something, and like, what? Pay with your palm. That's so common in China. That's the thing. Like, China and Asia is light years ahead of this. Dude, that was there 10 or more years ago across China and different places in Asia, pay with your palm. So for me, I just look at that and go, dude, that's like 10-year-old technology that we're just finally getting, and you're shocked. Asia is so far ahead on digital payments, non-cash. Like, you go to China, it's hard even to use cash anymore. And anywhere you go in Japan or Korea, Taiwan, etc., man, it is so high tech over there. You're scanning, paying like your telephone bill, your water bill, your electricity bill, and like a 7-Eleven at the register, kind of like light years ahead. Where anybody, it's so convenient, you can pay anywhere at any time. All you do is scan the phone and it'll take their money. And like 7-Elevens, and that was like that years ago. And you're being impressed with pay with your palm.
Well, I was kind of shocked about it because, I mean, people think that, oh, well, it's happening over there in that other country. It'll never happen here. It'll never come to the United States. We're gonna get rid of it. Blah 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 blah. But I thought that this was only happening in California, but it's not. I walked into the Whole Foods, went to the. I didn't go through the self checkout. I went through the actual registers, and then boom, pay with your palm. And it's supported by Amazon. Amazon is the one that's doing this palm reading kind of technology. You sign up through it with Amazon. Weird.
Yeah, it was only going to be in China. Remember that?
Yep.
The social credit score, it's only going to be in China. It'll never creep out. We are a democratic nation. It will never come here. There will never be such a thing as a social credit score here. This is built on democratic principles. And here it sits in your face. Now, see, that's biometric harvesting versus social credit limitation of purchase. A little bit different, you know, but you need both. China's taken it to the Uber, where they've scanned everybody's irises. They got everybody's blood. They took a blood sample from every single citizen. It's on a database, as well as your fingerprints, palm prints, all these things, and the biometrics and the social credits and all these things. So if it's an indication that's here now, then 10 years is where we sit behind China on the unveiling of this tech. I'll be 8 and just be devil's advocate. We're really far behind in the United States. I'm not meaning to really bag on the country, but in terms of technology and payment systems and pay tech, we are light years behind. We are so far behind. Like, really, the rest of the world has just already sped way in front of us. We're still stuck back here in clunky systems. But until you've been there and you've seen it and you lived with it and you've experienced it, you're still going to, you know, most Americans that go out and they come back and they, again, so if you're here in this place and that's all you know and that's all that works.
Because it's comfortable, Dave. People love it. People don't want change. They want everything to stay the same. And I think that by fighting against it, we're actually making it worse. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that that's what's going on. I got one last question for you, Dave, and I'm going to let you go. I know you got a lot of things.
I don't hear him yet. And I wanted to add, if anybody can go to NASA Ozone Hole Watch, take a look at today's ozone depleted column. It's a NASA Ozone Watch, and it goes Southern Hemisphere. Can you ask how screwed we are? I mean, it's not about how we are. It's about how you are with your preps, your community, your mind. Generally, as a global thing, what I've noticed a couple things studying history. First thing, that's the most important thing. It never happens everywhere on the planet at the exact same time. At least in the last, say, 1,000 years, aside from a major volcanic eruption like 535 AD, 536 AD, that was quoted the worst time to be alive. You know, there was so much sulfuric acid in the air, or sulfur dioxide in the air, that when people were breathing, they had this thing called like acid lung, where people actually formed sulfuric acid in their esophagus and their lungs. and so many people perished from that. And it was a culmination of 3 very large VEI-8s going on at the same time. But that's beyond the human control. I'm talking in the human domain with politics and war and economy and that sort of thing. Natural phenomenon and forces, they're outside our control. I'll just be in on this. It's never happened everywhere on the same time and the same all over the planet at the same time. There always seems to be 1 or 2 places that are spared. Like the easiest example is look at the United States in World War I and II. It never got over here, never got to Canada, never got to South America. It was just there. A little bit of Africa, and it was just, the rest of the world was pretty much left alone. And you go through these different periods of history. Now, the Roman era, I mean, they conquered a lot of the known world of what they had, but still that wasn't everywhere because there was China down the Silk Road that they knew about, but they never got there. So you look at upheavals through history, and it's never everywhere at once. That's the first thing to consider. And you can always find a place that is outside the chaos. And again, how prepared are you? But then how prepared are you around in a community? Because a lot of these things too, even if you go back to the Civil War and you start to look at, like Sherman and those guys, there's a famous saying, like Sherman went through Georgia. They just walked through and burned everything that they could see as far as they could see. Anything they came in contact with, they killed it or burned it. So there's a real famous saying, like if something gets super destroyed, you go, damn, that was like Sherman going through Georgia. And that was a true saying of how much destruction they wrought across the place. But man, Georgia, even in the 1800s, was a very, those things were spread out. So they never got everywhere. You can even break it down into little things like that, like the destruction ridden across the entire southern portion of the United States. It didn't get everywhere. And that's the whole same thing. Did people prepare in the communities? And it's going to be like that once again. Are you prepared with finances? What skills do you have? Did you take catalog of skills that you have and maybe bump those up and take another course, or like find a community that's doing the same thing? Because once they know you're in that community and you have that skill, if it goes grid down and you're like in a woodworker, community or something, you're absolutely going to be pulled in, wanted, and taken care of because you can build things. It's all about the skill set, what you might have to offer a greater community. Because I assure you, the same thing that makes us complacent for stability in that trap we're stuck in for stability is the same thing that's going to bring you out of the chaos, everybody clawing to get back to that stability. So if you think it's going to be like that forever, it sure isn't, because humans don't want to live like that ever. That's the last thing we want to do. So the faster we get back to stability is the faster the crisis will be over. But at the same time, it's the stability that got us into this crisis. See, that's the whole weirdness.
Occam's razor.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be us that's going to destroy ourselves. I think that's the only way that it can work, and they have to trick us into doing it to ourselves. I don't think it's going to happen from an outside force. I think it's going to come from within, and I think it has to come from within. And the people that are listening to this right now, you remember this discussion, right? We are going to be the ones to bring about the destruction of the United States, not the government, not an outside force. It's going to be us doing it to ourselves. Now, you sent me a video earlier when you were talking about finances, and you sent me a video about China and the what they're doing with their gold. Could you comment on that really quick?
Yeah, now before we go any further, I'm trying to back up the information contained in the video, because that's just a video, and anybody should do this. Like I saw, and I thought it was incredibly interesting about China trying to corner part of the gold market during the Chinese New Year, and I thought that's a good time to do it. It's China Year of the Dragon coming up. Okay, but I want to backdate, or I want to verify and validate. Which banks are involved in this? Did the public notices come out? I mean, was it from the government itself, or was it a bunch of bloggers that did it? There's a huge bunch of variables to validate if that story is true. Because if it wasn't from the government, it was from a bunch of bloggers, then that's just from a bunch of bloggers. So these are things after watching that video, and I have somebody over in Asia actually doing the research right as we speak today. I'm hoping to get an answer later time tonight, 6, 7, and 8 p.m. tonight. Was the information contained in that video correct? Can you backtrack news articles directly from Chinese media itself, from state-sponsored media, or official announcements from government media stating that? Now, if you can find that, and then you can find banks involved and sort of thing, then you make a much greater picture that it can make sense. So the story was that China is going, they're currently at, this is provable fact. Anybody can look up the gold prices on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Currently it's trading $120 more than anything else out there from like a London Exchange or from the COMEX. So what they're trying to do is siphon and pull all of this gold into the country by having and asking citizens to buy it, which gives them the reason to buy more because our citizens want it. It's not the government buying it. The citizens need it. So we're taking physical delivery for our people because they're going to be angry if they buy it and they can't get it. We're just making sure that they have it. You know, and there's a lot of, you know, fact and detail back checking on this that I really want to wire out before, you know, to come out fully with there's a few more bits in there, but I need to really make sure it's true. But the higher price for gold in China, absolutely. And it's going to keep getting higher and higher and higher. It would not end by the end of next week. I would anticipate the gold price being $150 higher in Shanghai than it is across New York or London or Chicago, if you want to go on the COMEX there. And that is going to keep continuing up. That's a provable fact there. They want to try to get the gold in, and central banks are at the highest buying of record pull purchases and inflows of gold ever in the history of keeping that as a data point. It's the highest now ever in a recorded time of central banks buying gold. Put that in perspective for a second.
Well, and then if China is going to buy up a bunch of gold, then that's just going to skyrocket the price of gold. I mean, that's what people have talked about forever. That's why people are saying go buy all the gold, because it's going to, the stock on gold is going to raise up to an astronomical price. But that's the way that it happens. Like the reason that something skyrockets up in price is because there's a limited number of it to buy. So if China buys all of it, then that means that it's going to go, well, not all of it, but a lot of it, then that means it's going to skyrocket up through the roof. But isn't that what people want to happen?
Well, if you want to break the US dollar and make the US lose control of the COMEX and the fake gold and silver pricing, yes. That's the only way we can control our currency is by controlling the price of gold. Because there's a peg to that, like there's a value exchange for that. Once you get outside, if gold is no longer settlable in dollars at a certain rate, then the mechanics of it don't work any longer. And then that's called the breaking of the market, because they're holding it down by using all these short contracts and manipulating the prices. It's been like that, because if you can keep that gold price at pretty much within a range for 40 to 50 years, the value equivalent of that back to the pegged currency for it can be manipulated, and everything from that can be manipulated, and all the bonds and all the derivatives and everything can be manipulated upon that, because the prices are pegged to the dollar that hasn't moved much. But once you decouple that exchange between the gold and the dollar in the way that it's been forced and held in place, and it can try and find its true market value discovery of what people will really pay for it to get you to believe their money is worth something. So to come to our new system. And from now on, this new system will have that gold backing it, at least in part as a settlement. And it will put it on the blockchain so you can see that there's that many tons of gold in each central repository. You can audit it on time in real time.
So maybe this could be the start of this, the collapse of the dollar. That's what you're, well, I mean, the dollar's already worthless, but the beginning of a new currency coming to fruition.
Well, I would just say one simple point. If the US can't control the price of gold anymore and manipulate it down to where it stays in its range, then once that breaks, the dollar's going to have to follow it. And at that point, it's kind of, you are talking, 6x inflation in not 6 or 60, 600%, like to day one to keep up with that. Can you imagine things costing 6 times more the next day when you wake up? I mean, that's insane. If the world were to establish, and if the other gold exchanges that are involved in the BRICS aligned nations all set their new gold exchanges at or near the exact same rates. So let's say, we're stuck at around $1950, $1980, $2,000 here, that the COMEX can manipulate through paper contracts. But if outside that, let's say Russia, China, Brazil, everybody comes with their own exchange, South Africa, and then the conglomerations of other nations, the oil nations and the sheiks and the monarchs all come together and they have their own gold exchanges within their nations, and they keep it within, say, a $5 or $10 rate in between those two, but they reset it to $12,000 one day. That's the end of the US dollar, because the value that has to be exchangeable value for that dollar. And it's been based on gold, which we used to be able to control the price of what people were willing to pay. That's the manipulation part. If you can control the price of the metals, you can control the fiat attached to the metal. And if somebody else is willing to detach that mechanism, well, then you got a problem. And that's kind of where it looks like you could take a country down without having to really go to war. But again, the nation at the receiving end of that is going to go to war, because that's the only thing that could save their economy, start manufacturing, put all those angry people to work, and stop the social chaos that would ensue. Now you can look across, there's tons of different, versions of that through history. That's one of the reasons I think that China would try to offer more for gold right now, to pull more of the gold into their country.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I was around halfway through that video whenever we started this video. Yeah, I have to look into it more, but that's what it really seems like what's shaping up here. We have any more questions for Dave before we wrap up here today? Anybody in the chat? No more doomsday stuff, guys. No, sure.
While you're sending a question, please keep in mind that news article, you're going to ask yourself these 3 questions for it to really have an effect on the rest of the world's gold pricing. Was it issued from the government, or was it a government issued mandate? Are the banks in on it? Do they have a cross swap function inside their payment platform that allows you to take money and just convert it into gold? And then the physical gold has to come. See, that's the whole thing. It can't be on paper. So it's going to have to be a physical deliverable. Now that needs to move somehow, and you're going to have to trust a company to move the gold. So, I mean, these are things that can be found inside the news feeds. And again, was it a government thing that told everybody buy gold, or we suggest everybody buy gold, or something like this? There's a few facts to be checked before. And if it is, then you have to do the dollar amount of how many ounces that would be per person in China on the total gold market. And, how much did the government say to buy, not buy? Would people buy more? There's a lot of variables in there, but so it's all about like checking these boxes. Are these pieces of information correct first?
What form of gold should we have, Dave?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a financial analyst or anything, but silver will rise when gold rises. It has for like 8,000 years, so I don't see why it would be different this time. And the average, it's been about 15 on average silver ounces, which get you 1 gold ounce. I think it's in the high 70s now. So it takes 70 ounces of silver to get 1 ounce of gold. So if the prices are going to run, they're both going to run. And I would imagine it'll come back into some sort of equilibrium where 15 or 20 ounces of silver would equal 1 ounce of gold, which for me means price of silver is going to have to go up a little more than the gold to catch up and meet the gold at that historic ratio. And we are talking thousands of years of ratio here, not like 20 or 30 on, satellite record of something. We're talking about 4,000, a good, maybe even the Chaldeans at 6,000 years prior of gold and silver ratio, matching it anywhere from 15 to 20. It's always been in that range for thousands of years. So I just, there's manipulation going on right now. So if it returns, then silver's going to rise along with gold, but probably at a faster rate. Not financial advice, just thousands of years of metals. It's a history book of metals, like what they were worth and what, yeah.
What just sparked my thought was with this China stuff. Didn't the Vatican, like a couple of months ago or 2 or 3 months ago, talk about some kind of financial? Didn't they advise people to take all their money out of their banks, or put all their money into the bank, or something like that? Or am I getting that wrong? It might have been somebody else, but
Can you say the name again? I got disturbed by the phone call. I should have turned off the Skype at this time. My apologies.
I thought it was the Vatican. It might not have been the Vatican, but there was something that came out.
Oh, the Vatican. Yeah, that was telling their banks to pull back gold.
Yes. That's what it was.
Yeah, I covered that story a minute. So Basel III went into effect. Now, if you're not familiar with Basel III, there's a new financial system emerging, and it started about 3 years ago, where Basel III was all these central banks coming together to reclassify gold as a tier 1 asset, just like US Treasuries used to be the tier 1 asset. But just in the last couple of years, they've also added in gold as a tier 1 asset. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like they knew that gold would be needed, and then you could guarantee as a tier 1 asset, central banks could change central banks anywhere in the world at 100% guarantee it's worth what it is. You know, the US Treasury bond, not so much anymore, but how prophetic were they to know to go and make gold as a reserve asset for the entire central banking system of the world just a few years before all this is happening? Wow, they're a crystal ball. Yeah, but excuse me, one last thing. Yeah, the Vatican was telling the central banks, this is around in Europe, nothing to do with the United States or whatever, but the Vatican was telling other European central banks, hey, we're the Vatican Bank. We're taking all our stuff back. So y'all in Germany and y'all in Austria and you over in Czech Republic, y'all get it ready because we're coming. Send it. It's all coming back to the Vatican. All our gold, all our artwork, all the metals, whatever form they took from, you know, gold sculpted or silver sculpted wine decanter, whatever, everything's coming back. And that was it. And that was the whole thing. And it all got pulled back into the Vatican. And you wonder why they did that. And that was less than a year ago. I'd have to get the exact date of that.
I think it was 3 or 4 months ago. Because
right. It wasn't like a long time in history. It was definitely this year sometime, but further back. Again, that's another sign. I didn't even think about that. The Vatican asking for all their stuff back. You know, to wind back to the beginning of the program, you know, talking about did the zombie apocalypse happen? A lot of people in the economic community thought something immediately after that was going to happen because the Vatican wanted all their stuff back. And then that like 7 days after the Vatican's proclamation of it has to be back by this date, people in the financial community thought there was going to be some sort of contagion or collapse because why would they ask for all their stuff back immediately like right now? But maybe you know, it's been in motion, but nothing happened. It was like a slow and steady. It wasn't that one big event like everybody's looking for.
Yep, it triggered in my mind. I remembered something about the Vatican, and it triggered me when we were talking about China there and the gold, because I was like, oh, that's a really strange and weird connection. But yeah, Dave, thanks so much for coming on, brother. Really appreciate your time and coming on and speaking with me. Really appreciate it, brother. Where can people find you online? Where would you like them to go?
Adapt 2030 on the YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and ring that bell because the algorithm has been kind of nasty lately. Also, the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast. Sign up for that, download. And then we have our radio program Thursday night, Rumble, every 10 p.m. To midnight Thursday night. It's a live radio program. We stream across to a bunch of other platforms as well. The Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast channel. Anything associated with Adapt 2030 across social medias, and then my co-host Ransom Godwin. So we stream out to 8 different platforms that evening, but the one we have most consistent luck with that the signal stays tight and we get the best resolution for the graphics we show is Rumble. So we're trying to direct people to the Rumble channel, Adapt 2030 with that. And for a parting question, Ryder, where do you think we're going yourself? You know, you asked me some questions. But you seem to have a pretty good grip on reality and these different dots that are out here connecting into a wider tapestry. Speaking of the Vatican, do you think you're able to like give your tapestry here of how you see things moving? That's a personal question from me to you. Like, all right, we talked so far. You see where my mind sits right now, but like of all that information we just shared, like where do you see it going next?
I really don't know, Dave. I have no idea. All of the predictions that have come out thus far have all been wrong. I don't think anybody knows exactly what's going to happen. They just have like a weird feeling in their stomach, weird jitters. There's something in the air, you know, and people have, you know, claimed to, you know, get a weird feeling when things are about to happen. But so far, a lot of people have been wrong, and that spans back all the way to these UFO doomsday cults. I have a whole series on my channel. I did 10 episodes so far on UFO cults that have done nothing but make disastrous predictions, extraterrestrial landing predictions, and they've all been wrong. Every one of them have been wrong. So I really don't have no idea what's going to happen. I really don't. And I think that anybody that says for a fact that they do know what's going to happen, they're wrong, especially when they give you a date. But with you, it's different because you're just you're giving accurate data. You're showing people what's going on, and you're giving your explanation of what you think could possibly happening. You're not saying that it's for a fact that we're going to see weird things, for a fact that all this stuff is happening. But a lot of people make those kinds of predictions, and every time they end up being wrong. And the new thing to do, Dave, is going to be to put the prediction so far in the future that by the time it comes around, it's no longer going to matter. The person that made the prediction is no longer going to be here. The people have forgotten about it. People no longer care about it. We've seen several people do this now, 2035, that's going to happen. Rael from the Raelian cult, that's still a cult, says that the Elohim extraterrestrials are going to land in 2035, and he had to build an embassy for them to land. And the only way that they were going to land is if him and his cult followers made a landing pad for him. Well, he's like 85 years old. He's going to be dying anytime now. So by the time 2035 rolls around, he's going to be dead. His followers are no longer going to care, and he's not going to have any repercussions for making that prediction and getting the prediction wrong. I think that the only way that we can do is like speak in generalities, and I'm completely okay with theorizing and making hypothetical situations in philosophy and theology, because I think that those things are really important. But when it comes down to predicting certain events, no one has ever been right. Anyone that's ever made a prediction to a degree of an exact date has always been wrong. So I steer clear of people making predictions for a specific date and making facts for the predictions, because I believe that we have free will and we can change things as they come. So that's my stance on it, and that's my thoughts on it. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Dave. Really appreciate your time this evening, and thanks everyone in the chat. Really appreciate you guys being here, and please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. I'll be back on Tuesday with Chris Allbeck talking about the origin of disc-shaped UFOs. I will see you guys on Tuesday.